We're back for another exciting episode of The Spicy Life. I am your relationship expert and magnetic matchmaker, Spicy Mari. And to join me in the G-spot, that is guest spotlight. Yes, I see you getting a little bashful over here. Yeah. We have the amazing, the phenomenal Travis Arenas.
So excited to be here, Spicy.
The crowd goes wild.
I know we're going to have fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a phenomenal episode. I'm so happy you were able to make it in. I'm going to give them a little bit of background on you because I know you guys are recognizing this fine young specimen over here. Travis is a 31-year-old man who wears a few hats. I love this bio that you sent me. Account executive in sales, model, and part of the restaurant world. An ex-athlete with a deep love for sports and fitness, and finds just as much passion in writing poetry as he does with his faith, family, and friends. Most recently, you will see Travis starring in Netflix Sneaky Links Dating After Dark with me, your girl, Spicy Mari, as the relationship coach. So Travis is not new to these sessions, y'all. he's very familiar to my voice and me getting up in that ass.
That part.
Even though it wasn't aired.
It was still felt.
You're used to my cray-cray, okay? So thank you for joining. I wanted to do an episode because the Spicy Life, we're all about the education over here. I want to empower people with the tools to make healthier choices. And so this is a safe space for you to speak your minds. Today's episode is going to be how to increase or enhance emotional intelligence. And one of the things that you were spotted for and got called a lot on the show is like, oh my God, look at how emotionally intelligent he is. Mm-hmm. We're going to see if that's true today.
I love a test.
We're going to test it.
Yeah.
No, but the way that we start off the show though, okay, is you have to tell us all, when did you first fall in love with yourself? That is the spice breaker, the part that gets you warmed up and comfortable. Yeah. You have to tell us that story in that moment. Yeah. Give us the story. When did you first fall in love with yourself?
I think that's such a great question because it's like, I think a constant. I think, it's one of those things you talk about ego deaths and you talk about like growing and maturing. I think you go through a couple different versions of like learning to love yourself. I think especially for young boys and growing men, there's a lot of different numbers and times when you feel like you're supposed to be somebody. And I think that's I think the divergent point is when you get to a place when you're older, like you feel like I should have this or I should be this way, and you start comparing yourself to other people, and it becomes like more self-reflective on like who do you want to be. And I think the first time for me was when I was having a birthday for people threw a birthday party for me because I'm actually not great with birthdays. And it was all of my friends were there and everyone was just expressing like how they felt about like the other people that wanted to be around me and the type of people that were always there, the kindness, the caring, the acceptance, a lot of people who have emotional intelligence themselves and just warm hearts. And that's when I realized how much I loved about myself was that I've been told that I do keep space for other people. And while like, you go through your own trials and difficulties, it's always been very important for me to want the people around me who reflect who I am. And I realized like who I really wanted to be all the time was somebody who cared about other people. And that's why I love having people around me who like envelop that same feeling. Yeah. So like when anyone new comes in, they're like, oh, it's a group of like kind men especially, but people in general who like have really accepted who I am and just let me come in and be who I want to be.
So you fell in love with yourself when your friends told you how amazing you are?
Yeah. Basically. But it wasn't like even amazing. It was just like they felt how much I loved them. And I think that's important because like you can show love in so many ways and people can think that they're loved, but like, when you truly feel accepted and safe, I think that's like the things that, especially in relationships, like it aids whatever that relationship is, whether it's familial, love or friendship. When you feel safe somewhere, you're able to be yourself. You can, if you're goofy, you can be goofy. If you can express the things you like, even if you feel like you're somewhere you're going to get judged for that specific thing, especially you're not going to open up. So I think it was my 27th birthday was like probably the biggest of like adulthood. Like I think there was sometimes earlier when I felt that way, but I think I had a longer road to kind of get there.
Okay. So it's not when it wasn't at my birthday. My friends told me how amazing I am. It was my friends at my birthday professed how I love them, and seeing them believe the way that I love them and cherish them made me love myself more.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also how much they loved each other, I think was key. It was, I think, being able to create community, you know? And so it was a bunch of people who loved each other because they were all of like mind, which really was that they were all emotionally intelligent.
And you're like, I did this.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. At some point you have to tap yourself on the back, right? You know, if you're going to love yourself, you have to be able to say what you love about yourself.
Yeah. I want us to break down, why do we think that emotional intelligence is important?
Oh, I mean, emotional intelligence is how you deal with your emotions, right? So it's like the level of capability you have to not only be self-aware of what you feel, but then how you react to what you feel, and basically being able to break those feelings down so that when things do come up, you know why you feel that way, or you can give yourself the space to feel that way. Yeah. So I think it's like everything makes you feel something. So it's like very important on being able to control yourself and also be able to react in environments, whether, especially when you're talking about relationships, right? Someone else is bringing their emotions to the table. You are now not only thinking about yourself, but you're thinking about that person. And so you're kind of having to do two things at once. You
got labeled and identified early on as the, man with the high EQ on the show. And for Sneaky Links, a show where we're like discussing hookup culture, I think it stood out because you were able to use the vocabulary and the language of feelings in describing your sentiments towards things, right? Yeah. I think you came across as intelligent, but also intelligent when it came to sharing your sentiments. And so why do you think, though, that us as women are so noticing that? Like, why do you think that we crave that at this time in the year 2025?
Oh, especially now, I think when...
Because it stood out.
Yeah.
Why do you think we're like,
It's funny, we live in the age of technology, right? So everyone can look things up. You would think everyone would be a little bit more advanced, especially emotionally. But I think, with the technology also taking away some of that sentiments of like talking in person. Yeah. A lot of young men especially, but people, just teens to upper 30s, like you still see so many people who just don't know how to communicate. And when you can't communicate, that's why there's tension, fights, all the misunderstanding leads there, right? The more you can understand someone, the more you can have empathize, and the more you can care about that person from a perspective that's maybe not one you had before, or something you hadn't really worked through, or something you thankfully did work through, and you get to share that from a place of being a little more healed or a little more grown in that aspect, I think. So I think, like, especially this day and age, it's like everyone can say communication's so important. Yeah. But then when it comes to having to actually deal with someone else and you have these big emotions, I think that's a lot of times like the most immature or unintelligent things that we do usually are just the most childlike things. It's not because we don't care, we don't feel things. It's usually, I feel angry, but I don't understand why. So you lash out. Or like, I feel, which angry could be jealousy or envy or all these things because of a situation, whatever it is. And you're like, trying to grasp it, but whether you're avoiding it or anxious or whatever you do, trying to blow up the situation, it's usually just a reaction because you don't know how to process your feelings. And so I think emotional intelligence has always been something that I've been like super into, just because I'm probably overly self-aware. But it's it is interesting, right? Like you can be emotionally intelligent. And I think something, especially the show, really made me realize, and like you go through these changes, is if you understand emotional intelligence is one side of the coin, and then emotional maturity is another side. And there is these waves. You can be emotionally intelligent and use those words. You might know a lot of these things. And that's how I kind of view myself sometimes. Like, I need to mature a lot of ways every day, all the time.
How? Give me the how.
I think that, I have a lot of traumas that I know myself. I'm very self-aware of them. I'm intelligent enough to understand, but they still trigger me. And when they trigger me, if it's coming from a place I haven't dealt with yet, like I had a relationship that was very important to me just before the show, probably about a year before the show. And I think the love was so deep that I became a little bit too involved, to where now I was more concerned with the other person. And then coming out of it, like my maturity was not there because my reactions were from the pain and I didn't know how to process the pain, even though I was aware enough to know, all right, here's where it's coming from, but I didn't know what to do with it because I'd never been through that kind of heart, break. And I think, the maturity, the intelligence is like being able to take that step back and break it down, self-recognize, really take a look at what it is, and then capture that feeling and kind of break it down of why that happened. The maturity is what you do with it, I think. And I think we all have a hard time with that.
Do you feel like you're operating mature now that the show's over?
I think the show actually made it more difficult, if I was going to be honest. I had a hard time after the show.
Doing what? Why is it a hard time with you now being like, oh, I'm so emotionally intelligent? How are we operating? Where's the maturity?
Well, I don't know how many people have gotten to go on a dating show, but if it's not usually what you think. And so I think I suffered internally with myself and what I thought, dating's already difficult.
Yeah.
Right. And then now you're dating on camera to the beat of whoever's,
correct,
producing. And I think, sometimes we get in our own way, and I feel like coming out of it, I thought I was so emotionally intelligent and so emotionally mature. And then it made me second guess what I thought, which I'm not used to as well. I had felt so sound, and especially going in.
You never had it played back to you before.
Yes. Or like even just the thought of being like, oh, every word that I said, because, I might have the emotional, speaking for myself, I feel like I have the emotional intelligence to, especially like as a mixed child growing up and the places I've had to grow, you kind of have to code things. And then I think gender wise that happens sometimes, or sex wise, or a number of different ways. And so racially, like, all these different little things, the same way you go to work, you might talk a little different. And it made me realize some of the immaturities I had, because I still had some of these things where, like, guy talk kind of situations. And then I'm like, oh, now that's on camera, and they could use it to where it's like, it might be out of context, or it might be in context, and it might have been something I said lightheartedly to someone. And now I have to realize that that's a habit of mine, that I might engage in conversation I wouldn't want other people to hear, and might not even be of my like heart or like what I feel and what I believe, but I said it. And so now it's a part of my environment and expression. And so it made me,
I feel like you dodged a bullet.
I think
you
I
dodged
did.
a bullet. You and the rest of the cast members, because the receipts that they have from production, they didn't show half of the craziness that y'all said or did.
I'm aware.
I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
Because
got away with some stuff.
Hotmess.com. Not you, just as a collective. Like there was a lot of stuff that I was just like, oh, the mindsets. Like you could through my lens, I'm like, oh, I can see their youth. I can see the naivety. I can see the areas that I need to help them.
Yeah.
I can see like where they're at and where I would love for them to grow.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit about that, right? I think that the self-awareness component is extremely important. Where do you think Travis needs to grow?
Oh, I definitely think it's in probably my cores, which I've always been like trying to identify. For me, it feels like childhood growing up, I never felt very accepted. So I became a people pleaser. And especially, I think I was able to control that a little more with like maybe at work or with my friends, and you kind of scale it back. And I think that's what I'm saying with like, when I was like in the deepest relationships I was in, that's when I wanted to be the most accepted. I was like, I love this person so much, or I care about this person so much. And then that's almost the places, if you don't have the intelligence or the experience in that thing, right, that you go back to what you know. And I think for me, when I get back to that space where I feel like I'm so vulnerable, and that's usually when you start self-sabotaging or lashing out and hurting other people. And especially as an adult, that's what, like a child, you can understand a little bit, but it still doesn't look great. And the older you get, the more it's like, oh, you should have probably figured this out, right? And I think for Travis, for me, it's always been like the people I want to love the most. I like the closer they are, the more when it feels like they abandon me, that I now get self-destructive and or lash out. And so that's usually where I make my worst decisions, right there. And it only takes that moment. It could have been a loving, great relationship for 6 months, a year, however long, or a friendship for 8, 10 years, and you get in that one physical fight, and it's like, all right, that takes everything away because now you've done something that really ruins the picture of all of it and presents as the present.
Yeah.
And, you know, even if it's more complex than that, you have all these other feelings and things that have happened. But I think for me, it's definitely being able to still capture those places where it's such a deep wound that's not something that happened to me today, but it's something that happens today that reminds me of when I was 5, 6, 7, 10, then I have to go back and deal with those little things. And so it's really, I think, going back to kind of where you started, like why you love yourself. I think it's reminding myself why I love myself, even if it feels like someone I want, like their attention or love isn't giving me that, you know? And so just trying to learn to have that peace with myself and understand what's most important, because that's usually how you love other people better too. And I think that's what I want. But you lose sight of it in those moments when you feel hurt.
Give me some specific examples. I want you to talk to me about your wounds, because I recognize the wounds, right? I feel like, and I can relate to the growing up mixed and feeling like this constant, like, okay, who am I showing up for today? How, you know, where do I stand? This person's already judging me. They want to put me in a box, and like your infamous line, like, I can't be boxed.
Yeah. Unboxable.
I'm unboxable.
Absolutely. I do feel that way.
But I understand what you're saying as far as the wanting to be, you know, like understood and acceptance component.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes when we haven't done the work, it can hurt us, and our need for acceptance or even attention can hurt others.
Yeah.
How has your wounds hurt others in your love life?
Yeah, I think breakups are my probably worst area. And I feel like coming out of the show, that was something that kind of gapped. And then going through some different things with the show coming out, that had some different effects. And it was like, anytime, it could be someone I'm not even, you know, exclusively dating, but, you know, if we've been on enough dates, 3, 4, to where, you know, you're like in this courting phase and the emotions are coming up because now you're building intimacy.
Yeah.
And then that goes away, whether it was them or you or situational. Those places usually are my like fallout places. And so the deeper the love, the more it's like, I didn't know I could feel this way. And so it's like, you know, nowadays they have a word for everything, but like the crash out, you know? And so I think for me, that can turn into self-sabotage so quickly because I want to be accepted so much. And then I feel like I was in this place where like, maybe I came in super healed, and then I go into this situation with a person I care about. So like my last relationship, or I think the last 3 that I've had over the last like 8 years, have all been like a little bit closer to me being able to get to where I feel like I should be maturity wise, which is like when it ends, it's okay because I'm still there. I'm still me. It was not that person completing me. But at the end of a breakup that like really mattered to me, for a second, it feels like I wasn't enough. Which goes back to that, you know, whether it's the core abandonment wound, like, because my father wasn't there. And I, as a young man growing up, and especially like even after the show, like a lot of people want to usually talk about my more feminine qualities. I grew up around all women. I enjoy like stuff like that. A lot of those things are just things that come natural to me. I'm very comfortable with. But then when you take it to scale, I might be comfortable in a city where people say that, but then you take it nationally, you know, people are making videos, or when, you know, to take it back to like when you get to an end of a relationship and someone maybe says something about you because they're hurt. And then it's, you know, a tick for tack kind of thing. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that could hurt me this way because I thought I knew myself. But I know coming out of my like last relationship, something that had come up was the person was very upset, and she basically noted a bunch of things that came from instances of minute detail. Like she didn't really point out this or this. It was just like, hey, you care about your friends, so you really want to be really close with your friends, so like maybe you're gay. And it was like, I can tell this is coming from a place of hurt, but now I'm hurt, and now
because you just said something cruel to you.
Yeah, and it was someone I care about.
Why was that hurtful though? The calling you gay, why is that hurtful?
I think it was hurtful because of that attack on masculinity. I think I've always kind of been having to fight for who I am. So whether it was, you know, being a black man who grew up around mostly white people, and so it's anything I do sports wise, they're like, oh, it's because you're black. But at the same time, they're like, oh, you don't talk very black, you're whitewashed. And it's like, you're always fighting for your identity. and you're like, no, I'm just like, this is who I am. Or then you come to like even the show and people are like, oh, you only like white women, or you only like this, or you only like that, or you're gay, whatever it is. It feels like they're like taking it from a perspective of not getting to know you, but just judging you based on what they see, which you should be able to be like, all right, I know that's not me. But then there's certain things where you're like, all right, now I feel misunderstood. And I think growing up, a lot of times I felt that way.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be playing with the other kids, or then I wanted to be going on dates with the girls that I thought were interesting or attractive or whatever it was. And I felt like a lot of those times I wasn't getting those opportunities because I was black, or because I was maybe a little more, you know, goofy or feminine, or whatever ways it was looked at those times. I think a lot of those things have changed over time, but I never really felt accepted until I was attractive, or until I was good at sports, or until I was, you know, a good student. All these different things made me feel like I had to achieve to do those things. And I think especially going into relationships now, like when you're going and maybe you're not fully emotionally ready and someone else isn't either, and then you kind of going back and forth between the things that hurt them, the things that hurt you.
Because they know your pain points.
And they're pushing
vulnerable.
it, and then you're looking and you're pushing because you want them to feel something too, but really you both just want to feel understood.
Yeah.
Like you should, like, I think a lot of times, like if you can clearly communicate and be honest, and someone else has that maturity too, they'll understand. I think, you know, from everything I've read, I would love to hear, it's like the more time you spend with someone, they're going to hurt you eventually, like in some way.
It's inevitable, yes.
Yeah.
Relationships come with pain, which is why you got to be selective in who you choose.
Right.
How is this person going to hurt me, right? Like, is it intentional, unintentional, or even if they do, is it to the point of destruction?
Right.
I think, though, you talking about masculinity and femininity, right?
Yeah.
I speak to this, both of these energies often on the show, and that has to be hard. Having to defend your talent, your intelligence, your cultural background, essentially your parents, right? Because your ethnicity. So it's like, dang, now I have to defend my family and upbringing.
Right.
And then now too, your sexuality and even gender. I can see that being exhausting. But those other areas, you felt like, well, I'm going to accomplish so much so that you guys can't say anything to me. I'm going to be the best of the best. Do you feel like there was ever moments that you felt like you needed to overcompensate on your sexuality or your masculinity because people were trying to label you as feminine?
I don't think I had felt that way until the show came out, and it made me think about it. And luckily I had enough time to like I had previously, but I think especially San Francisco, that living there now, people are so accepting there of all things that like I was able to, and the last person I dated, I think really opened that up for me, allowing me to kind of explore a lot more of the like feminine side of things that like I was interested in and cared about, and like have always been a part of me, but especially like where I grew up and where I'm from might get judged a little bit more. And it was funny because something that's come up from the show a lot was people commenting on all the dangle earrings and the scarves, and between those two things, that's where they're challenging. And it's like at this point of like where I'm at, I'm like, I can accept it, but it still is interesting to like feel that attack, because for a moment it like does hurt, because it just feels like, oh, because I like those things now, you're gonna put me in this box. And then I do feel in there for a minute. It's like almost like a claustrophobic feeling. But
the same way when your ex did it to you, do you feel the need to defend? Do you feel the need to be like, hey, wait?
And for a moment, I think I do. And I think it's just because it's still just a little bit of a wound, but I think that's where the intelligence comes in. If, you know, and when I feel it, I feel comfortable enough to be like, no, I do like those things. Two, I understand those things are not gender neutral, like just because they've fit mostly into one space, they've come from, I mean, if you even look at any culture, it's like most cultures, especially going back through time, if you're just talking about earrings alone, but femininity in total, like it's a part of being human. And so I think online has made that more difficult because, you know, you're now intaking a lot more people's comments, energy, whatever you want to say. But I think there's just a slight moment where it's like, it feels like an attack, but then you have to be able to, I personally conceptualize them like, wait, I do care about those things. I like those things about me, and I know who I am. Yeah. I think it was just, I think it came from being early on. people, it almost felt like they could restrict access for you. It'd be like almost if, I always think about it in a way of being like, if every person thought you were gay, then it's like you almost are limited in who, because someone has to see you then and be like, oh, you are interested in me.
Do women ask you that? Like, is your sexuality question, you said, in your town or when you go out now, do people ever say, are you bi or are you
I
homosexual?
think anyone who's been around me long enough hasn't, because they know who I am and how I am and like the way I bring myself to the table, and so they accept and understand all of me. But I think anyone in a short term, like, I mean, I was just at a wedding last weekend, and it was only because of the way I was wearing my jewelry. Someone at the wedding had asked me, and then she thought I took offense to it, but I was actually just laughing because it's funny because I was like, here's this thing I'm going through from the show. Yeah. And for a moment that did, but like in these moments, it's like person to person. No, I think it was the online part where it's just like, it feels like, oh, you don't know me. And for a second, that if you haven't gone through that, and I grew up in a time, you know, when there wasn't really internet, and then you kind of like grow into it. But even for me, I'm from a small town, like it wasn't a big thing, and there's still like Instagram was growing and things like that.
But now you're in a public like space. Do you, and I'm out of curiosity, because people do want to box you, right? They want to know, what are you so I know how to treat you? So even what are you so that I can even make myself feel better about myself, right? Like that happens often. Yeah. Are men hitting on you because men are curious or they don't know where you stand on your sexuality?
That's what's funny though. I think usually the gay men are like, oh, he's not gay. Every once in a while you'll get like, a few.
They're not confused.
Yeah. So then, and that's almost where I feel like the most pain for just a sec. It's like, not pain, it's like confusion then. Because it felt like that's where I've always had to live at, is in between black and white, you know, gay and straight, all these things. It's like, there is always a spectrum, but most people, want to be able to know how to treat you for whatever reason.
Have you ever, and I have to ask this, have you ever been with a man?
I haven't been with a man.
Okay.
But I think I've always described myself as like I know what people are attractive. Like I've never looked at a man and been like, oh, he's not attractive just for the sake of saying it. Like,
you know, like, a good looking man. Yeah. You're like, I look in the mirror every day. I know how to spot one.
Yeah. That part gets a little harder sometimes, you know. So I try to tell myself that self-affirmation. But you know, like I've always been like very honest about things. So I think that's where that femininity has always bled out of me in a way where like I've always felt comfortable just being like, no, this is the way I see the world. Like these things are great. These things are not so tasteful to me, whatever it is. And I usually hold those things on my morality more than I do on my interests. And I think your interests change and your perception changes. And so I like try to be open-minded and think about those things. But I think it was always difficult because it felt like everyone else wasn't. And you know, when you just want to play on the playground, or, you know, you just want to be invited to a party or whatever those things are, or you just want to be accepted like for who you are. And now the internet's like.
But you weren't wearing like jewelry and scarves and stuff like that when you were younger though, were you?
Right. No, I wasn't. But that's because I think I felt less comfortable to do so. Okay. Because I didn't even really feel, I think it was hard to decide. I mean, even in the 2000s, it felt like it was hard to decide whether I was wearing baggy t-shirts, and we're like, where I'm from, everyone's wearing flannel and Wranglers and stuff like that. And so I remember I had one of my friends get like called slurs, homosexual slurs, just because he was wearing his hat backwards. It's that kind of like tightness. And I grew up there for 20 years. So it's like, so a lot of those things were embedded where I felt like I had to hide things almost, even if they weren't even that big of a deal. Like, just wearing rings in general there, like people already have this closed offness, and I had to be able to be outside of that so long and experience other things to be comfortable knowing like I cared about those things and I'm okay doing that, even like there, like just being yourself, you know? And I think that was difficult for a long time. So I feel like a lot of people want to judge you in the moment without thinking about like where you had to come from and what you had to do. And I feel like a lot of my emotional maturity and intelligence, well, I feel like my intelligence came quicker and my maturity is still building. Like even now I would be like, I have times of being extremely emotionally immature. Like I think it's specific, but it comes up. Like there's times and you're still growing and changing.
How do you want to be seen to the world?
I want to be seen for how I feel inside, which is like I want to be the person who cares about other people. And I think in that, you know, might come from a place of originally wanting to be cared about. I can understand that. But I think eventually down the line, the maturity part for that alone came in, and the understanding being like, no, I do, like, to me, the world would be a better place if everyone cared about other people more than they do themselves. I think you need to care about yourself to a standard to be able to take care of yourself and, you know, become who you are and be your best version, be healthy and be able to be responsible and all those things. But at some point, I think, you know, it can go a little far and it becomes selfishness in a way that's now taking away from other people. You're less worried about the common person or just the person sitting in front of you. And I want to be the person who is both. I want to be within myself and love myself and love others just as much, even through what they're going through, and be able to see people.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that is what makes you so charming and gives off the, like, I am an emotionally intelligent person. The 5 elements that you need for emotional intelligence are self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy, okay, motivation, and then social skills. Do you believe you have all 5 of those?
Yeah, I believe all 5 of those are definitely skills I have, and there are skills, right? Like, I think that's the way they're defined the most, versus like emotional maturity is kind of like almost a culmination of environment and what you have already had inside of you, what you know, your intelligence. But I feel like emotional regulation is probably the one that I have to work on the most.
And that's like hand in hand with self-regulation, right? Because like the self-regulation is like, okay, how I manage my actions. The emotional regulation is like how I manage my emotions to create positive actions that reap the benefits that I want. How do you feel like it showed up though in your relationship with Zoe on the show? Do you feel like you operated from an emotionally intelligent place, or were some of those emotional wounds coming up for you?
I think it was almost like a 50-50, and I hate saying that, but like I felt like a lot of it came out, and like that's why we were able to have these like high level discussions and like really understand the depth of each other and where we were attracted to each other was coming from that place of being like, oh, like, you know, we can have a perspective of each other and learn more and grow deeper because we're both at a place where we understand like what it takes to go deeper. I'm willing to be honest and vulnerable. I'm willing to be seen and tell you things that you might not want to hear or might not be your perspective. And then you kind of go different places from there and you learn a lot more about that person. And then I think there was times too when it was like, I felt like I was being judged a certain way, or, you know, even when distance comes up, like that's such a difficulty for me because I usually need people to be there.
You need a lot of attention and acceptance.
Yep.
And that's, if you're not there to affirm and to cuddle and love, like you start to go through a little spiraling probably. Okay.
And that can be difficult because then, you know, you might be fine 6 days of the week and then 1 day of the week. And it only takes that small space for you to allow it to take over. And then you're making a bunch of bad decisions that affect everything.
Have you made any bad decisions since the show has aired?
Yeah, like I'm someone who I'm not proud of it. Like, in fact, like I think something that gets lost a little bit, especially the more you care about like learning about yourself and accepting and like trying to grow over those things, is like it may come off as like you didn't learn kind of feeling, or you like almost like pride in a way. But for me, it's like I'm like just radically accepting. I think that's something I've had to like learn the last year, especially even more, is just being like, this happened. Here's why I felt this way. Here's what I went through, like trying to like tag the little spots and analyze so you can understand it. And then being like, I don't like that part of me. I need to let go of it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the difficulty, whether, you know, no matter how it looks, it can feel a little different because it's internal, right? Is that you might be battling it and you might be winning most of the time, and it's only those little spots, and so only you know like your journey. And I think for me, that acceptance piece, when it comes in and I feel hurt or I feel really outside of myself, is usually when I'm the most reckless, and it usually comes at like wanting the acceptance of others. And so I think the difficulty for me in dating has always been, I can have an extremely emotionally charged and deep relationship with someone for an extended amount of time. And when I have my little glimpses, or it could be mild. So even coming out of the show and having difficulty with Zoe, we had some highs and we had some lows, and those lows can make me just flip a switch sometimes. And that's something I have to work on, because if I'm going to be honest with myself, it's like knowing here's what's going to happen if I get to that place. I'm going to feel these things and I have to be able to regulate those things. And when I don't regulate them, it usually looks like me going and vying for anyone's attention. Anyone.
Okay.
Like
so.
I can
set you up perfect for where I wanted to take this.
Yeah.
Because I want to speak to the sneaky link culture. I want to speak to the situationships, the hookups, the booty calls, that I need for you as a man to give me your opinion on. And do we think that this behavior, right, within the culture of dating is healthy or toxic?
Oh, it's extremely toxic.
Okay.
I think right now we have layers of toxicity building up, because I think everyone thinks that they're like, this is why, this is the problem, this is the problem. Most of them probably aren't educated in that area, or a lot of accountability issues. And that's why I've always been someone who's like, no, I know what I did wrong. And even if we have different perspectives on that, here was how I perceived it, and here's why I care about it. And so I think the hookup culture is like one of those things where a lot of people aren't realizing the pain that's in there.
Yep.
Because I think most people, especially when it comes to men, I like to speak to, because that's what I know, and that's what I go through, is that like most of the time you don't feel better in a hookup situation. Like usually there's something you're trying to get out of it that you can't get out of it. And so you're trying, and so you come out, it's like those little dopamine hits of anything.
Yeah.
Like you get a moment of it. And so if you're going to keep crashing into that and trying to get that firework over and over, you'll get it a few times. But I think all those people, including myself, it's pain. Like I know for myself, certainly, like whether that wants to be questioned by anyone, like I want a loving, long relationship like that. I want marriage, but just because I've been a part of maybe hookup culture doesn't mean I didn't want that. It means I had things that I need to work on, right? And I think a lot of the times that's my difficulty, is I can be so high and it can make people feel like I'm full of myself almost, because I do come off like I'm intelligent and mature. And then when they see the opposite, they're like, oh, you're not. But it's like both things can be true.
They're like, I'm bamboozled.
Yeah,
and
it's like, well,
no,
so am I.
I'm also immature.
I'm still learning and growing too.
I'm still growing.
I'm just now, like, especially when you go on like a bigger platform, it's like, no, now you're just seeing all of me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's more to you too. And so there's some people who might be extremely emotionally intelligent and mature and have other issues, you know? We all got something we're working on, like point out the perfect person.
Correct.
But I was on a dating show, and now it's all about, you know, my love life and things like that. And so I think,
what damage do you think that you've done though, right? So like in recognizing, hey, I have these wounds and this is how they show up with me dating women or seeking attention or validation. Talk to me about the aftermath though of how you're leaving these women.
Yeah.
After your wounds led you to choose them.
Yeah, I think you missed the opportunity of being able to, I think something I've wrapped back around to is like being a protector almost. I think everyone, when you're emotionally intelligent and mature, you protect someone else's feelings as well, because that's empathy. And you recognize like how, you know, you can't always make everyone happy, but you can respect them. And I think, you know, sometimes misunderstandings and different things happen, but I think for me, sometimes I lose sight because I'm now hurt and I'm like turning inwards to my feelings. But if you don't take the time to understand them and you react to them, then you move out of a place that now might not be respectful to someone else or might hurt someone else. And so I think a lot of times I've had different times where, I might have treated someone right for 3-4 months, a year. And then it only took that 1 or 2 times after to do something, move a different way, whether you move on too fast or if you're dating and, you know, you're just getting to know someone and then you're dating someone else at the same time, which is like, for me, I don't see any problem with that. I think that's very normal, especially in this culture, and there's a respectable way to do it. But at some point, if you're not communicating enough or it's changed and you haven't communicated that, or someone's communicating something to you, you can do something that extremely hurts that
Are we
person.
fully transparent? So when we date multiple women at once, or let's just say like when we're sleeping with multiple people, okay? We're dating multiple people, and we're honest. Hey, just to let you know, you're not the only person I'm sleeping with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think the emotions still play in there. Like, you know, it'd be the same way. I think sometimes you can tell the honest truth and it can still feel like you did something to the other person from their perception because, you know, they're in it emotionally too. So you can be honest and they can still be hurt, you know? And I think there's a layer to that now where if you're emotionally intelligent enough or you grow that, you can avoid those things because you can see what gets into that situation, like knowing when someone is maybe more in it than you are. They might not have communicated it. You might be on a pace that seems normal and everything might be honestly displayed, but they have big feelings. And so you dating other people, you might be telling them.
Yeah.
But if you're not recognizing the ways that it pains them, then you're almost enabling the situation too, and you're not being responsible for yourself, I guess, is the way I usually feel.
I would say that's like what happened with, that we learned about you and Angelique early on, right? When you guys like came in as like the sneaky link couple in the show, and she identified and acknowledged like, hey, when I would see him like with other people, it would make me like kind of feel away.
Yeah.
You knowing that though, and then you still, right, deciding like, I'm not able to give this person what they want, or I'm creating a sentiment of rejection in this person, which is affecting their esteem. But I'm gonna keep hooking up with them anyways, because I like the, you know, gratification that it's giving me, or, you know, whatever, however it's boosting.
Yeah.
But how do we excuse it? How do we rationalize that it's okay with ourselves?
In like the toxic way? Like how do we
how do you
usually
rationalize it? Like I want you to speak like as a man, I rationalize the hurt that I create by
the good that I also create. So I think it's a validation in where you're like, I'm also trying my best in this and I'm bringing the best I can to the table, and then you kind of validate all of the other things that are happening at the same time. I mean, I've had more recent things happen like that to where it's like I thought I'm putting my best foot forward, but I'm in these situations I've never been in, and then I'm looking back and I'm like, that was a chain of bad decisions because I was validating the things I was doing from a place of being like, yeah, I was doing 70% good, but I was 30%, and the 30% was hyper destructive. And I think at some point, you have to self-acknowledge enough to go, all right, if I'm going to, how would I want this to be treated? What do I think is the right way for this to be treated? And I think that is all that self-awareness and taking the time to step back and really look at it is the only place you can be empathetical. Because I think like, especially post show, life has been so fast, faster than I'm used to, like a fast life. And this has been 10 times faster. And in those places, when you're not checking in with yourself is usually when you start making the most mistakes, because you revert back to those initial thoughts, or you might be thinking about things from a selfish perspective.
After the show, did you go back to your sneaky link ways, or did you stay with Zoe? What happened after the show?
So me and Zoe talked after the show for a while. So it definitely was more quiet for a minute. We were having a good time. We were still at distance, so we didn't really get to see each other super fast. I think it was like 4 months until we did. But we had like these ebbs and flows. So it was like, it was really good coming out. And I think it was still like trying to figure out what the show was and like what that experience was and get back to your normal life. And we were FaceTiming a lot and texting and like sending each other all these things. And it was like still boosting along, but then it kind of died out. And I think I felt away, she felt away, but we kind of silently went. And I think those are especially places where I validate myself more, and it gets a little difficult, but I think it's like, especially like post trying to grow over being a people pleaser, that sometimes you overregulate a little bit. Like I think I tried to get more selfish with things because I was so used to giving everyone else everything that now I was starting to be a little more too selfish at this point. And it's like, especially like for me, something that's big because I want people to be close and validate and all those things. I still work on those things, is that when someone doesn't really show they want me in their lives, it feels like, then I start backing up, maybe subconsciously first, but eventually I'm just like, all right, if you haven't texted me back in 5 days, like why would I text you, even though, because I sent the last text. And it's like, it's a little petty. Or like if I've invited you to X, Y, Z, and so on, and you haven't invited me to anything, like, do you even want me around? And those kind of things come up. So in that
situation, who's leading?
No one, if I'm not, like, because, well, you know, you might also say you're leading it off an edge, because I feel like, you know, yeah, I think that's something I've been learning this year heavily, is like being able to lead those situations, and something I came out with maybe armed with the intelligence for and not the maturity for, was that is like feeling like
leadership is masculine or feminine?
Masculine.
Direction is masculine or feminine?
Masculine. Clarity
is masculine or feminine?
I'm not sure about that one.
Clarity is masculine.
Masculine?
Intuition is feminine. Guidance is masculine or feminine?
I would feel like that's still masculine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Protection is masculine or feminine?
Masculine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just taking you through like the gamut.
I agree.
So, and because we were having such like an important conversation about masculinity and femininity, I think that it's important to note that when you become indecisive, when you start playing that game, when you are lost and you go within and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be tit for tat, or I'm going to mirror the feminine lead, right? You're not even mirroring the feminine. You're mirroring the wounded feminine. There's wounded feminine and wounded masculine within our natural healed masculine and femininity. And so when we get to a state in our wounded feminine where we are feeling like we are the victim, and we don't want to be the victim, we want to be the victor.
Right.
We overcompensate and we lean into our wounded masculine, which is toxic masculinity. It looks like overcompensating. It looks like playing games. It looks like competitive energy. You're not going to win. I'm going to win. So we're now doing this tit for tat like game in dating that doesn't allow for what you told me your values are and what raises your esteem and what you pride yourself on, which is love.
Right.
And so everybody feeling loved. You actually like sound like you go the opposite direction.
Yeah, I feel like when I feel wounded, I do. But I do also, I would say, I have a question in the reverse, because at what point are you leading and they're not following? Because like I said, like if you were doing everything right in perspective, if I'm going out, I'm taking her on dates, and you know, you're following up and you're communicating how you feel, and it feels like you're not getting those things back, at what point then are you supposed to like cut that or retract? Because if you're voicing those things and you're saying, hey, I feel like you don't really feel like you want me around, or feel like maybe you're not that into me, and I'm not sure. And, you know, they can say one thing, right? But if they keep not doing anything, if you don't ever know what's going on with them, they're not, you're opening yourself up and saying, here's why I am who I am. Here's the things I like. And it feels like they're not reflecting that back. Is there a point where you are leading or guiding and they just don't want to go that direction?
Yes, but let me tell you how you get the clarity.
Yeah.
So the most amazing combo ever, okay? Masculinity coupled with emotional intelligence. So that masculinity plus emotional intelligence is a crazy combo, because your direction, your leadership, your decisiveness, the victor in you, right, says, I want this person and I want to lead them to success. I want to lead them to safety. My emotional intelligence will kick in and say, something's going on here, right? Because I'm so in tune with how I feel and what I want. And I'm seeing maybe some dysregulation on her end, okay? How do I get my goal achieved and tap into what she's experiencing or feeling and provide the safety that she needs? I need to investigate. I need to do research. I need to speak to the God in her. I need to speak to the feminine in her and let her know she is safe with me. I need to let her know that I will lead us to battle. I will lead us to heaven. I need her to follow in this moment. And whatever hurt or wounds that came before me, I am here to help heal through my love. You say that to a woman and you say, I want you. Come with me.
Yeah.
If you will have me, I will show you the way, right? You start talking like Jesus, truth, and the light.
Yeah.
So like, a woman will submit to that. But I don't really know where I stand. I'm gonna just do what you do. Yeah. And so what will happen is if that affirmation that she needed, because oftentimes we're testing you, right?
Right.
And as superior men, this is how you become superior, right? Is that emotional intelligence plus masculinity. As a superior man, you recognize that as women, our feelings fluctuate or they waver. And sometimes we are challenging you because we just need you to make us feel safe. We just need you to affirm or validate the fears that we have and create a sense of safety for us.
Yeah.
And so when you can recognize that because you're tapped in, you can speak to it. Because sometimes we don't even want to acknowledge it because we have our wounds as well.
Right.
But if you're tapped in, you can be the thing that makes us feel less anxious. You can be the person that makes us feel grounded. You have that power as a man. Like, you were born with that power. Whether you've leaned into it, whether you've exercised it, whether it was shaped or molded or influenced by the family in your life.
Yeah.
But let me tell you about your superpowers. The more sneaky links you have, the more situationships you have, the more destruction, okay? Because that dick is a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah.
The more that you use that weapon for bad and evil and not good, the less powerful you become.
Yeah. And I can feel that. I definitely understand. I think it's like one of those things where if you don't know the potential of it, it still is happening anyways. And I think that's been my journey for sure, is learning what it takes to kind of get to the other side of that bridge. Because I think even just as you're speaking, I'm like, those things make sense, but my almost desire to fight back against it feels like, all right, well, I didn't know these things, like, to some point. And it feels like I was saying, up till my 20s, I feel like I was unexposed to so many things that I didn't really, the people pleaser in me wanted to continue to find ways to connect with anyone and like find those connections and like really adapt to those people. And then that became less leading. And so I think I found a lot of quality because I've always had a strong leadership quality in me. But when it came to relationships, it wasn't reflecting the same. And then I feel like the older I got, like I said, those last 3 relationships I really felt the most in. I feel like everyone I was leaning into that leadership and that guidance and a lot of those protector roles. And the second it got to a place where it hit that wound, it would just revert. And then I would be already stuck in a place where now I'm dealing with the cleanup from my, so it's like, I feel like growing has had to be that for me, of that acceptance, because as much as I wanted those things to be my strengths, I think sometimes you have to acknowledge where you're weak in them to be able to build them and, put the tools around yourself to, help that. Because, if you're, especially like a young man, I think I got caught in my early 20s a lot where I had come out of like high school and all these things with like this idea of like wanting to be married and wanting love. And I felt so much rejection over high school and so much like, it's all these different things where it's like, I felt like I love this person so much and I was all in for him and I gave him so much. And especially as a high schooler, you overthink it. And then I got to this place of feeling so rejected that coming out and then I was in the Bay Area and I was, being a little more mobile, then you start looking with a little less trust for other people and you lose that leadership quality. I think I definitely was just bound to just letting everything be where it was going to be, which was me leading it basically off a cliff 20 times in a row. And I think the more I went into these bigger relationships throughout my 20s, I felt more control and leadership and guidance until that moment, and it would slip and then it would get 10 times more toxic because you're older and grown, you have more ability to do more damage. And I think every relationship's got a little closer, but even with Zoe, it's been like having to learn what that looks like, because I think she commands leadership a little bit. And I almost wanted to test that because I'm like, all right, well, I want you to care too. Because then that little part of me is like, I need a little validation to know it's worth guiding it there. And I think that's what I've had to like kind of learn, even just like, we got into it a couple weeks ago and it was like, here's the place I felt like I was at. And I was trying to come to her with like, all right, it feels like this whole time, maybe every time I lean in and I try doing everything I can, it feels like you don't care about it. And then for her, it felt like when she would respond back, it felt like she was kind of deflecting. And so it felt like I wasn't getting accountability I wasn't feeling like I was getting clarity. I'm like, I just want to know, like I'm investing, I'm putting myself into it, my emotion, my person, my time, my effort. And are you going to reflect do you want me to keep doing that kind of thing, I guess? And I guess that's where sometimes, kind of being able to be radical with yourself and like lean into those things I've had difficulty with. So I had to learn and look and be like, all right, well, I might still feel like you should be saying if you like care about someone or trying to be around them. I do believe those things are true still. I think, it is a dance. I think, you give and you give, but if they care, they also like push back a little bit too, to show you they're interested, or to be a part of that dance. But at the same time, I think I had to come to that realization where I was lacking and where I do lack, which is that like when the going gets tough, sometimes I lose my leadership because now I'm allowing that person to dictate what I believe about myself. And that's always been difficult. So I think that's where I think that intelligence has to meet the maturity. And I had to realize, like, even though people can question whatever they want, I do believe like my intelligence does show for that reason. But I can still have places of immaturity that I need to build and grow, and both things can be true. And so I have to grow into those things if I want to be the person I want to be. And so I think I'm still tweaking a few of those things, but like I do have that awareness and a lot of the wherewithal to be able to enact myself upon my emotions and be in those relationships. And that's why they get so deep and why they feel the way they are, and show the way they are to the people around me.
Yeah.
Or, to the viewers, things like that.
An example though that you just gave with Chloe, right? You guys get into it and
Zoe.
you feel like, sorry.
Word slip.
I did this a lot on the show too. I'll be like, Chloe, Zoe. I'll be like, okay, their names are so funny. Okay, an example that you just gave with Zoe.
Yeah.
You guys got into it. You guys got into a tiff, and you felt like she wasn't essentially giving you maybe the motivation to continue pursuing.
Yeah.
Okay. So motivation is a huge part of the emotional intelligence aspect. I think what though needs to be assessed first is your motivation, because if you were operating in emotional intelligence and you're operating as the superior man, you would say, do I want her because I want to win? Do I want her because if I conquer her love or her heart, that will mean that I'm lovable? Or do I want her because I believe that together we can walk into our purpose and kill it? I believe together we are better. I believe together, if she will trust me and have me, right, we will be on a path to success. Okay. Whatever that motivation is, you have to identify the motivation first, because a woman can tell when your intentions are not pure. A woman can tell you're wavering on me, therefore I cannot give you what you need in this moment.
Yeah.
Because you, sir, will not assure me. Yeah. And since you're taking the lead and you are the masculine, that assurance has to be there. You have to be so certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that you want to even attempt to just give this a try. Not like we have to get married, but like, hey, I know that I want you, and in real time, what is it going to take to convince you? And so if you give that assurance, if you have that clarity, the feminine will follow. She will be like, oh, he's so convicted that I have to release. I have to tear this wall down. I have to trust and follow. Now, sometimes the wounds are beyond your control. Okay. And to your point earlier, you were like, when do I walk away? When do I tap out? When you see that you are loving her properly and she says no. Yeah. But if you aren't loving her properly and she says no, then you have to do some self-reflection. If you are loving someone properly and they are rejecting your love, that means they don't see your light. Yeah. So you literally have to operate out your core value system, and that's how you test and measure for it. But if you're being fraudulent and then you're mad at her fraudulence, you're not gonna be able to test for it. You're never gonna have that clarity.
Would you say, I know I don't like to also box things in, but is there a way to quantify that? Because I feel like that's like the last step where I'm like, not the last step, but like a place where I come to a lot, because again, through like a lot of past relationships, I think I'm someone who reflects on those things incredible amounts. And that's where a lot of that intelligence comes from, is like really being concerned with why certain things go a certain way, and trying to get more clarity within myself too. Because I feel like there was a lot of times I knew for a fact, like, this is everything I have to give you. And that's where I think I come to this big crash on the other end, is I'm like, I gave you everything I could, and I was leading this the direct way and doing everything right. And it felt like you half-heartedly accepted it. Like, at the time it felt like acceptance, but then I started to realize it felt like I was fighting you the whole time. And it feels like it gets hard to see in there when to let go, because I think a lot of times I take it so far.
And then you don't get affirmed and you lose motivation. You're like, okay, I tap out, because you're not validating or even like giving me any encouragement to keep trying. I understand that piece. Okay. I think though, for what we're talking about is, because I can understand how you lose fuel and momentum. But I think it's important to understand that as a woman, we need that certainty to know that if I fall, you're going to catch me, because our love that we have to give you is so intense. Okay. And if we operate, and we've been hurt before, there's this huge danger warning sign that you come with, especially like with maybe your past or what you've experienced. And so you have to tap out when that person is not reciprocating you having showed up as your best, because that means that they're wounded beyond control. That means that, hey, if you can't trust me, and I know that I'm trustworthy because I'm operating with integrity, then you are too wounded, and I need to move on. You have to release that person. I don't like who I am starting to become. I don't like how I am starting to feel when I am with you. You are turning me into the worst version of myself, and I'm giving you permission to do that.
I think that's usually the place I end up, is that's the problem. And I go through those cycles. And I think that was something with the show that was like incredibly difficult within itself, is like feeling like you have to question yourself at any point. Then you kind of lose that road of being like, all right, here's probably when I'm losing myself and becoming the person I don't want to be. And I think then for me personally, it's always been having to get to kind of like a hole, the bottom out, and being like, all right, this is probably as low as it can get, and how did I get here? Because everything was so good. And I think that was, I think the last year, especially just even with Zoe specifically, I've had to learn those things, and things that we've gone through is realizing that, I was allowing myself to get lost in someone else, because at some point I felt like I gave my all, and then I started being the worst version of myself, and realizing at that place where I was still making that choice. Like, I think it wasn't clicking, because I was validating those things through like, all right, well, you treated me this way after I did all these things and showed you every way it could have been. And I had all these hopes and dreams, and you kind of it felt like you just flushed them down the toilet. And I took that feeling, and I just allowed it to just turn into just chaos. And
did the previous woman do that to you, or Zoe did that to you?
The previous one did it to me, and I think Zoe I brought that into... Zoe had to
do the cleanup in the aftermath of the previous trauma that you had with somebody else.
But I do feel like what I was looking at was...
Is she a janitor? Zoe, are you a janitor?
For a moment, and that's why I do appreciate, some of the places that she's allowed me to rectify myself a little bit, because it was something I did realize, and something I do realize actively and work on. And I think it's one of those things that's like, when you're not going through it, you don't really, it's harder to work on sometimes, So I think like, especially like one of those big trends right now of things is like taking like this space for yourself. And I think, it's actively important. And so, but in that time when you might not be dating at all, or like working on yourself, or whatever you're going through, these transformational places, you can forget that the difficult part was the relationship parts, and you have to like really focus on those things. And I think for me, that's been like something just became a big red siren of being like, all right, if I don't take a hold of this, no one's going to do it for me.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was what I was just about to ask you. Who holds you accountable or responsible? Is it your social circle? Is it your male group of friends? Is it your, you know, parents? Like who holds you accountable to being a better version of yourself?
Yeah, I think myself, something I've had to learn this especially now is like anchoring for me on God, because that is I think the truth of it all, because people waver too in different directions, or sometimes have a difficulty holding you accountable because they might be going through their own things.
Yeah.
But I think, again, kind of mirroring back, my friends have been that. I have had a lot of really good friends. I've had some not as good friends, and not even because they weren't good people, just maybe in that area they're a little bit enabling because of their own wounds. And then that's where I think toxic masculinity can really take over, is if you put a bunch of wounded guys together. It's just a recipe every time.
Recipe for disaster.
They make you feel like the things you're doing are so right, and they're usually so
Women
wrong.
do that to each other too.
Oh,
It's
I
like
know
we're
that.
we're guilty of it
Yeah,
also.
I know that. But we know,
We're
like
enablers
men can
sometimes too.
do some real damage. And so like, I've always been aware of that. It's like,
So you're checking in with God.
yeah, checking in with God. But I have a lot of really good friends, especially like good friends in good relationships. So people I like want to emulate the way that they are, and why their partner cares for them, why they care for their partner, how they bring themselves to those relationships. So I've had to learn to anchor into those things a little bit more. And almost to, I think something that I ran from for a short amount of time was shame for a while. Like, I feel like I felt so much shame for so long that I found ways to like have peace with that and move and grow. And then when I came back to certain shames, because it felt like I was on the other end of being hurt, it felt like it wasn't my shame. And I think I had to accept those a little bit more. I think even more the last year especially has been like just totally being like, all right, here's the things I don't feel shame for, because I know this was certainly me giving my best.
Yeah.
And then here's the point where now I feel shame on, because I allowed myself to become someone I didn't want to be. And I think it's having that duality of being like, you're going to go through growth in ways that, you have to kind of like let parts die, but it doesn't mean like it was all, you're just a bad person. You still have to find the places you love yourself and the places you need to maybe love yourself a little more. And I think that's where it's been, is being like, all right, I did feel shame over this thing, and I did react poorly to this, or this was a bad action, so especially like coming out of like a relationship that I felt very hurt by. I didn't take the time to be like, all right, I love myself for doing these things right. I think I'd let the relationship go so long to where I had already become that person where I was so vindicated in trying to even the score, probably. Yeah. That like,
have a tendency to be tit for tat.
And,
We've already learned.
And that score can be evened, and it reflects back on yourself.
So can I tell you something though that I did love? A moment that you and Zoe had on the show, which I was also watching behind the scenes. Okay.
That's so crazy to think about.
I know. I was like, so she turns to you, I think, and she's like, I think you guys are like laying on the daybed or something. And I can't remember where the conversation was, but she's like, am I your type? And it was the universal language that every Black woman understands what she's asking, right? Because we see this handsome, attractive Black man, and you're mixed, you are tall, you're fine, you got the curls going on, we love the curls, but she wants to know, what she's really asking is like, do you love Black women? Do you see beauty within me? Do you date women who look like me? And I think that like us as a community, we want to know that we, similar to we're accepted, that we're desired. Yeah. And so I love that moment that she like said that to you, because then you went into, you were like, like, of course, I find you like, you explained it, but do you understand the cultural relevance and importance of when she turned to you and said that? Yeah, I do. I think that's something I spend a lot of time, more than you would thinking about, especially because usually I'm pitted on the opposite side. So like I can fully see how it's totally different, and how that's been totally different, especially for light skinned mixed men. Yeah. But Black men in general versus Black women. And so it's like something I don't have to go through, but I've felt similar things to, but not even in scale. And so like I try to like continually put myself there because I can understand it. But I think that's one of those things that
I think about more because I'm trying to learn more and go like even through Zoe's experience there. It's like, it feels like that's like a moment where I'm going through my thing and I'm having this big experience too. And I'm trying to relate to multiple people and go through this experience. But that experience was very specific. And then the more, of course, that I'm getting intimate with her, I'm having to think about that a little bit more and a little bit more. And then even after the show now. Yeah. And I think I'm still learning a lot of those things because it's very difficult when it's not you to like put yourself fully in that.
Yeah. It requires next level empathy.
Yeah. And I think that one has been one I felt like, I'm like, no, I understand, but it's like, you don't ever fully. And so I'm still trying to wrap my head totally because I want to like feel the depth of like how much that can hurt, because I do feel like I have a similar experiences with it, but of course they're not the same. So I'm like trying to fully like hear her. Yeah. And I think that's what it is just watching and hearing and listening and being aware of, I mean, even that experience was pretty blatant in my eyes, which was difficult because like again, I was trying to do my best and you're watching someone else go through something that while like even in the beginning people look at it and they're like, oh, well, you dated this person and this person. And I was like, well, first I just thought she, wasn't into me either. So I started with the people that seemed more obvious.
There you go.
I started off more obvious and timing wise, they didn't really let us it would be different.
We were room for y'all because the moment that like two gorgeous people, and I still to this day be like, dang, you guys, we're not supposed to be this fine. Right. Like you guys was so phenomenally beautiful. And so the moment that we saw that there was like an opportunity for you guys, we're like, please, 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 can we celebrate each other? Can we like, and I'm just like you, I'm open, right? I definitely believe I believe in Black love, but I also believe in interracial because I'm a product of one. Right. I think that we can love across the board. Yeah. But to be able to see on a large scale Black love being celebrated between you guys, I think was a huge moment for us as like a culture. Like, yes, he does love her. He does it. He is attracted to her. Is Zoe your first Black woman that you've ever dated?
No.
Okay.
And that's what's always funny to me. I'm like, I've been situationally, I feel shorted, if anything, because I'm like, I laugh and think about it now, but it was really frustrating for a long time because I'm like, no, I'm into Black women. I'm not around a lot. Like even in San Francisco, it's like people be like, oh, you only date white women. It's like, well, there's 90% white women there, and it's not, I don't look at them as they're white women. I'm like, they're just women to me. And I just find the people who have similar interests and similar values and similar morals to me, and I adapted there. But like, it's like I've never looked at a Black woman like, oh no, because she's Black. Like, am I less used to it? Yeah, 100%. Like that just goes with anything, but it has nothing to do with the attraction. And I think it makes it a little more difficult with dating sometimes because I've culturally not grown up as Black, so I think that part you have to learn a lot more. I mean, but I think that's the fun part.
The women who you grew up with were white?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, you were in a household of white. Okay.
Yeah.
Who were the Latinas?
Well, I mean, even my sister is Latina.
Okay.
Because my stepdad is Hispanic. Okay. And so like, but my area pretty much was like
the one that came on the show. Oh, I thought she was white. Okay.
Yeah, no, she's 50% Latina.
Okay, so she's mixed too. Okay. And so,
but she's white.
She's white and Mexican. Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's
like,
she's
dealing with having to like self-identify all the time too. Like, let me tell you what. Okay.
Because most people think she's just white. Yeah. And it's like you're almost on the opposite end of it. Like,
yeah. Okay. But so this is like a constant for you, always having to like, I understand, but I just also feel like I love the way I did. That's one thing that we got right. I was like, I love the way that we celebrated your guys' relationship. I would love for, of course, it to blossom into more, but you guys got to iron.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Y'all need to have another session with me.
Yeah.
Because now we have,
we got a lot more.
We need another session because we need to iron some things out. Because this guard and this wall that you got going, like, sir, where are you leading Zoe? So we need to get very clear on that. Okay. But I do believe that what we've all done in that experiment was extremely important, and how you showed up was extremely lovely. And I think giving us the opportunity and creating hope for us as women to see a man have such amazing dialogue with us around feelings and, around your perspective and views culturally. and spiritually, I think it was very endearing. So I applaud you. That took a lot of courage.
Thank you. I tried.
That took a lot of courage. We have a lot of stretching, but you've come very far.
We're still working.
I want you to share with everyone where they can find you, how they can get more of Travis. Where can they hit you up at? What any program? What are you selling? Anything you're selling?
I got things to sell. No, I'm on a few. I'm pretty much on everything at this point. I'm on Instagram, Take Care Trav. I'm on TikTok, Take Care Trav. Twitter, Take Care Trav. And then I'm actually working on a couple things right now. Working on a poetry book. That's the most important thing to me. So yeah, it's shaped around love. And how love can be transcendent in many different ways, because while you might not have one thing, maybe you lose a family member, or maybe you lose a relationship, or maybe you just fall, or a sport you were playing, whatever it is, because you can't play anymore. There's always more love to be found, so it's actually called Love Never Dies, because there's always another place to find love, especially within yourself. And then as well as I'm also making some music with my friends as well. And we have a band called BB90. So
are you an artist, singer? What are you?
Yeah, singing and a lot of writing. I think it's a
you have a
dream.
Voice?
Lightly there,
give me a little something.
We can't do all that right now. I'm coming off of a weekend in Vegas with those girls. With Zoe,
this could have been America's
Angelique.
Got Talent.
Hey, if I should have warmed up with a little tea and honey, because I need it. But if I hadn't just come off of Vegas with Zoe, I would have given you a little something. But I already knew coming out. I was like, hopefully my voice isn't already just shot for this interview. But I'm out there. I got some things in the works, but I think definitely is really excited for everything coming up and just keep growing and changing. So I appreciate, it was such an experience beyond, words that I can really say. So I appreciated having you there through that, because I think, I think it was hard when they named the show, and they told us.
You're like, oh crap, what did I sign up for?
But I think what you brought to it was so much more endearing and wholesome in a way that allowed us to all actually reflect on those things. No matter what the situations were going on, you were always bringing a lot of different educational pieces that really matter in the dating sphere and in love and with yourself. And so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to keep walking in my purpose. I'm trying to save you.
Yeah.
All of you. I'm trying to save him.
Some of us want to be saved.
I'm trying to save him. Let me know when you're ready. Let me know when you're ready.
There.
You guys can always play with my Twitter stroke, my IG at SpicyMadi. Go to thespicylife.com. Make sure that you share this episode with a friend. Schedule a consultation with me if you need to. I'm here for you. And there you guys have it. You have just been spiced.
The Spicy Life.